In the vicinity of the old abandoned warehouse, there stood a bulky figure, its presence obvious even from a distance. As I approached, I felt a reluctance to investigate any further, but my curiosity got the best of me. When I arrived, I found a raging inferno, consuming everything in its path. The flames were so intense that I couldn't even get close enough to investigate. As I stood there, a document caught my eye, flitting around in the wind. I grabbed it before it could fly away, and concluded that it was undeniable evidence of foul play. Someone had deliberately started this fire, and I couldn't resist the urge to find out who was responsible. Despite my lack of experience, I refused to ignore the challenge and took it upon myself to investigate the source of the blaze. As I searched, I found a miniature device that looked like it could have been the cause of the fire. Excited to excel in my investigation, I brought the device to a forensic specialist, who confirmed my suspicion. The evidence was undeniable. Someone had set out to destroy this warehouse, and I had found the source. It was a feminine figure, who had been in a heated competition with a male colleague. The dread in her heart had turned to rage, and she had underestimated the power of her actions. In the end, justice was victorious, and the perpetrator was caught. But the conflict between the genders had been ignited, and the minority was left feeling threatened. It was absurd to think that in this day and age, there were still those who felt the need to resort to such drastic measures. As the decade came to a close, there was a growing tendency to underestimate the power of women. But as evidence continued to reveal their abilities, the urban population began to see the absurdity of such notions. It was urgent that we abolish these archaic beliefs and provide adequate opportunities for all. In the end, the fire had caused pollution and a decrease in the number of jobs available in the area, leaving many in a solitary and desperate situation. But in the midst of the gloom, there was a glimmer of hope. The flexible and numerous talents of the population had been revealed, and the vision for a better future had been reignited. It was a frank reminder that even in the face of menace and pollution, we must resist and reveal the truth. The city had been in a state of turmoil for a decade, and the evidence of its decline was undeniable. Pollution had become a menace, and the population had been reduced to a solitary few who struggled to survive. In the vicinity of the urban center, it was obvious that something had to be prohibited to decrease the conflict. Despite the urgent need for action, there were those who hesitated, reluctant to challenge the status quo. But a few visionary individuals, who caught a glimpse of a better future, refused to ignore the situation. They were flexible, willing to excel and compete, even in the face of an enormous, masculine force that seemed to dominate the city. The men and women who took on this challenge were victorious, but their triumphs were often dismissed as absurd or fictional by the minority who still underestimated them. Nevertheless, they persisted, and their progress was frequent and undeniable. They abolished outdated traditions and regulations that had long hindered progress, and frank conversations about the city's future began to circulate. As the century turned, the tendency to resist change began to decrease, and the city began to mount a comeback. The miniature victories added up, and the once bulky obstacles that had seemed insurmountable were now being tackled with a renewed sense of purpose. And although the road ahead was still long and arduous, the recent progress was evidence that the vision of a cleaner, more adequate city was not just a dream, but an achievable reality.